Welcome, everyone, today. I am Deborah Olshan Cooper, founder of Your Career Design Lab. And as you know, in my series of The Passionate Professional, I am bringing to you some of the most incredible professionals in whatever areas that you might be interested in. And today I have one of my favorites, friends, colleagues, and an amazing human being who has done so much for so many people. Please meet Rosemary Ravinal.
Hello, Deborah. Thank you.
Hello, Rosemary. So good to see you, sweetheart. Rosemary is an accredited public relations professional, e-speaker, certified visual presenter, media expert, executive coach, and public speaker. So I think for a couple of you out there who are considering any one of these professions, you got her all in one. Rosemary founded RMR Communications Consulting to address the gap in presentation skills, public speaking, and media relationships among the C-suite executives in bilingual English and Spanish and by cultural settings. In 2020, she adapted her coaching model for the virtual stage, as we all know what happened there, and created the Zoom score based on 10 essential elements of professional video meetings. Her public workshops and custom training for corporate teams are preparing business executives and leaders for the new normal in this hybrid and remote workspace. And you know, for many of you, and we're going to talk about that today, how essential it is to show your personality, to show who you are in a box of a video and not having that touch point experience. But Rosemary can show you how to do that. She's also the first Hispanic contributing news analyst for MSNBC and hosted several award-winning local TV and radio shows in the New York area. Currently, she's president of the Miami Wynwood Toastmasters and member of the National Speakers Association. I could go on, but I want to speak to the woman in front of me, as I'm sure a lot of you do. So welcome, Rosemary. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Deborah. And I want to talk to you because this is a conversation. So I love hearing what you're doing. And I think that this space that you created is so interesting, so valuable for everyone.
Thank you so much. So let's start, Rosemary. I mean, you've had so much illustrious things happen in your life, and you've been so many things. So I'm just curious, as I always ask, what were you doing in your room when you were just in your passion and joy, when time just passed before your mom called you for dinner? What sparked this passion, do you think, in you?
That's a question that really brings up something that I have never shared publicly. And going back to doing a scan of my life, which brings me to what I'm doing today, really starts with being a latchkey kid. When I came from Cuba when I was 8. I was put in boarding school for several years, got into this whole trauma thing because of the separation from my family, didn't speak English, was bullied in school. Then I was bullied by my grandmother, who was not psychologically stable. There's a number of things which created a stammer, which created basically an inability to speak. This was around my early teens. But because after I left the boarding school, my parents both worked, and we were into that immigrant acculturation period, when you just need to start your life over. And so they both had to work. And so I came home and I was alone, let's say from 3 to 6 when they got home. And I created this fantasy world where I was speaking to an audience. And I was doing rhetoric, and I don't remember what I spoke about, but I know that I sounded to myself very intelligent. And I was there talking to the wall or talking to a doll or pretending that I was doing a speech. And I did this often. And I had forgotten about it until not too long ago when I said, that's where it started. I really wanted to be a communicator. I wanted to share ideas. And I was already in that place where I wanted to take a stage and express ideas that motivate, that inspire, that inform people. And I think what I was saying was gobbledygook, but I remember that sense of pride when I was there, and I wasn't like one of these, taking my brush and doing a microphone thing. It was just talking to an audience. And I remember the satisfaction that I got from that. And I think that's where it started, but I was hindered by my lack of fluency and the verbal glitches and the what we call the disorder, verbal disorder, speaking disorder that I struggled with for many decades after that. But that's where it started. I really wanted to express ideas to people. I wanted to move people to action by my ideas. And I didn't even know what public speaking was at that time. Who knew? I mean, I was maybe 12 years old. But since then, I've always really pursued the path of being a communicator, whether it be in the public relations realm, as you know the industry well, corporate communications, then a spokesperson, and then some stints as a talk show host. And of course, I had the pleasure of being on air with MSNBC in its first 2 years. But the idea of speaking to people and having people listen and something changing in them, something clicking, something that they didn't have before, is tremendously gratifying.
What a great story. Unbelievable. And really, that is where it begins. So did you then, when you were going to college, go, this is what you wanted to pursue? Did you pursue that in college?
I remember I had a stammer, so I was a little bit handicapped. What I did instead was, in high school, I was the editor of the school paper for like the entire 4 years. And then when I got to college, I was the editor of the paper and the yearbook. And then I started doing radio. And then I changed my major from journalism to broadcast journalism, which was just a nascent, it was a brand new major. And I loved it because we got to do film, we got to do TV. Mind you, this was all in the age of black and white, like thick, like 2-inch magnetic tape. And but the mechanics of doing radio and TV were the same as they are today. You have to have a script and an intention and have guests and keep things on schedule. And I remember that radio was so therapeutic because when I had the microphone in front of me, Deborah, it was better than any voice coach, voice therapist that I ever had, because it was live. It was like, okay, so here is this live microphone. I have to speak into it clearly and without stumbling. And I have to do this right because there's no second chance. It's live. It's there. People are going to hear me. I don't know, thousands of people or maybe a few hundred. Didn't matter. It was that sense of urgency that brought me to the moment of saying, okay, this is it. I got to get myself together and no more stuttering. And that's it. And it worked. It was my therapy. And I found that I was able to summon the courage to do it properly. There were a few stumbles here and there, if I remember, but I got through it. And then the more I did it, the better I got.
Wow. I love that. Unbelievable. So let me ask you a question. So you were saying when you were 12 and then when you went on radio and all of that. So when you're working with clients or you're working with people who come to you, are they feeling like their background was very similar in terms of, not feeling confident in speaking to people, but then mustering up the courage? And what is your recommendation to people who may have been going through that, or for young adults, that look at it takes a lot of courage, like you just mentioned, or a lot of confidence to speak in front of people and interviewing. Is there any things that you, obviously with your expertise, can share with us of what is the most important thing when somebody's in front interviewing and trying to have a conversation?
Yes. Public speaking is the foundation of leadership. And it's important to say that because it is leadership not only in the workplace, in your career pursuits, but in every aspect of your life. Being able to communicate clearly, accurately, truthfully, authentically, to make yourself heard is fundamental. We're not really taught that. I know that public speaking is part of some curricula in some university settings, Debate clubs are, of course, popular, but debate clubs are not really public speaking in everyday life. We're not really taught how to have the etiquette of having a conversation, how to interrupt, how to introduce ourselves. In other words, how to interrupt in terms of if you go to a party or a networker and you want to interrupt into a group of people who are already speaking, how do you interject? How do you work yourself into that conversation? How do you do a simple introduction that says who you are and what you stand for? All these things, we tend to stumble over it because we're not taught how to do it. And because we have this sense of humility. Oh no, they're not going to be interested in what I have to say. Oh no, you want to know what I do want to do, what my aspirations are? Yeah, I'm not going to bother you with that. But we need to be assertive and tell our stories in our own voice. In the world of a C-suite, let's say of a professional business, it's unfortunate that many people advance because of their skills in other areas, operational, technical, but the soft skills aren't really encouraged. Now they are. Now there's many studies that are indicating that those soft skills of being able to speak and motivate and inspire and galvanize employees to action and stakeholders and shareholders and investors, et cetera, is one of the most desired qualifications for a leader. And that's now become much more a factor in terms of how candidates are selected for high level positions. Before it wasn't as much that. Now, so with that, the soft skills as being, I think, almost weighed as important as the hard skills, then but many people weren't taught. And so they're trying to do some catch up, saying, okay, how do I talk to my employees? How do I do a video that motivates people, that makes people think that we're doing the right thing, that we're including them, that there is transparency in terms of how the company operates. Sometimes they feel very uncomfortable. They get stuck on a script. When you're talking to a script, that's very staccato and robotic and mechanical, right? But there's ways of doing that so that you're following a script, but you're doing it really more from your heart. When you know what you're talking about, you can afford to improvise. Looking at younger generations, up and coming emerging leaders, we find that because of the digital age, and there's actually some fascinating research on Gen Z that I found recently, that age group is not necessarily that comfortable with speaking because they were born with an iPhone or with a smart device in their hands. And so their way of communicating is through imagery, through video, or through text. And so the ability to express themselves in front of people live, face to face, is challenging, but all the more important that they acquire that now. And research indicates that they're very receptive. I hate to talk about they versus us. That age group, many of the people who might be watching this, might really appreciate that they need to acquire those skills and have express interest in doing that because they recognize that they didn't grow up with it. And so in order to be competitive and really pursue their career goals, they need to have it.
I love what you just said. And you know what's coming up for me, Rosemary, which would be so helpful to the people watching this? Let's take Gen Zs or C-suite people or whatever. Could we just do a little role play now? Or perhaps you can maybe say the 5 elements that you teach people. What are the most important steps that someone could say when they're knowing that they're going to have a Zoom interview? What should they have top of mind?
Oh, for a Zoom interview specifically, there's other things that come into play besides the speaking. For a Zoom interview, now I have, of course, a Zoom score, which is based on 10 important almost indispensable aspects of a professional video call. But looking at five, I happen to have an acronym that's called ASSET, ASSET. And I think it will answer your question. The assets are everything about us, our person, our manner, and so forth. And I'll go down the line. Assets, the A is appearance, how we show up. How are we groomed? How are we dressed? How are we positioned in our shot? What is the environment in which we present ourselves? But definitely the appearance, dressing properly, even if it's dressing from the waist up, having a professional demeanor, having what we call executive presence, which is a sense of poise and gravitas and self-awareness. So that's the A. The first S in the SSET is a staging. Where are you? What environment do you find, or have you put yourself in that says something about you? Is it a noisy background, a messy wall, or just a white wall, or is it something that maybe has some punk rock posters on it? Is that what you want your future employer to see, or have you taken the time to style it? The next S is styling. Style it with some elements that speak to who you are. What books do you read? What movies what movie posters, or maybe artifacts, musical instruments, sports memorabilia, that always says a lot about someone. And it's also a great conversation starter, right? You say, hey, I love this team, or I love that team. And maybe the person at the other end of the call is similarly interested. So you have something in common right away. So you have to be very thoughtful and purposeful how you curate your space. The E stands for energy, the energy that you bring to the conversation. So the energy entails the emotion, the verbal variety, using your voice and pausing, taking a breath, not being machine gun through what you're saying, having, a well-paced conversation where you're articulating, you are making yourself understood, and that you're also conveying genuine enthusiasm, right? Which you can do with your body language, with your hands, with your head nodding, with your gestures, with your smile. And all of that, plus the volume of your voice. If you say you're really excited about something, of course, we know that that's fundamental in stage acting, that we want to use our vocal instrument, right, to advantage. So that's the energy part. And then the T is understanding the technology, certainly knowing what it takes to have a good video call. You have to have good sound, you have to have good bandwidth, good lighting, you have to be framed in a way that makes you look as natural as you would be in person, right? You don't want to be down here, you don't want to be up here, right? You don't want to be to the side, you don't want to be in shadow, my rule of thumb is you have to have people see the whites of your eyes. So if you can see the whites of my eyes, then I'm well lit. You can see that. Most of the time you can't, because there's shadows, of course, that come naturally with the eyes. So these are some of the basics. Then on top of that, of course, is preparation for a video interview, knowing what you want to say, knowing what questions you want to ask, and how you want to manage the time so that you are taking some initiative and not just being there to answer questions. And I'm sure you cover that beautifully in many of your other tutorials. Right? How to insert your messages into what you're answering so that you don't necessarily run out of time and say, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that.
God, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's excellent. That is really excellent. What would you suggest to somebody who gets stammered, when they're asking the questions? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Would you suggest that people sort of understand that and look at the company, of what the company is about, so that they can have a conversation? And I also want to go back to what you were saying about staging, because that's so incredible to me. I mean, there's even things I haven't thought about in that way. Like if you were doing entertainment, like you were interviewing for an entertainment job, even though it may be a little, like, wouldn't it be great to put some posters up? Like, would you suggest kind of being in the environment to whom you're interviewing with?
Yes, as long as it's truthful, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to be phony and, and put something nearby that you think is going to convince them or persuade them to your side, but you don't have any connection with. So you have to be, be genuine about it. But how to answer the question of tell me about you? I mean, you want to have an opening statement. You want to have your elevator pitch. You want to have your statement of purpose. And that usually is comprised of, what value you bring to the company. I'm a problem solver because I do this and this and that, or whatever it is that's appropriate for the occasion. But you want to come right out with something that is attention grabbing, that's truthful. And then you can go from macro to granular by giving examples of how you are a problem solver.
I love that. And as you know, we work with students all the time and young adults about that. Can you give us a story of somebody that you might have worked with? I always think it's so great in examples of somebody that you worked with that, came on and said, I'm really good at organizing, setting up this and this, and it's like the walls going up. But then you worked with them and then they said, then you heard them say this. Is there anybody, I just love these kind of stories, of maybe somebody that you worked with that then ended up speaking beautifully about themselves?
I have to think, and I want to be accurate in my recollection, or maybe I'll just have to do a composite of a couple of people. But one thing comes to mind. It was a position for an admin. And this person had a lot of the qualifications, but she was still very junior. But she had a lot of volunteer experience where she'd managed a lot of logistics. So she could multiple, I hate the word multitask. She could manage multiple projects at one time, and expressed a great deal of concern for the detail. That it's in the detail that success resides, and that there were some things that just were not optional, and the thoroughness or double checking things, but that was already proven. She had good work examples and certainly good references to that effect. But then we got to talking about the soft part, about the hard space, about how she felt about her colleagues, about how she would most often bring a birthday cake in for someone and really enjoyed celebrating other people's birthdays and felt that it was an occasion that brought people together. And that even if nobody else took the initiative, she always came in with something, a balloon or a cake or cupcakes or something, because she felt that was something she enjoyed doing. She enjoyed giving. And similarly, she would often bring flowers into the office just so that everyone could enjoy the flowers in a place that was shared by others, because she felt that was a little bit of nature coming into the workspace. I just thought that for someone who was, I think, mid-20s was such for me, really an evolved perspective that you can't teach that. That she brought those values with her and saw them as beyond the call of duty, and that was adding value to the team. I thought that was really exceptional, and that always stayed with me. She ended up being a good performer, not top performer, but she performed well. But those particular attributes really convinced me, and I thought that they were, and I still believe that they're good skills to have.
You know what? I totally agree with you. And I think that when people do come from the heart and things that are part of their DNA, and they're able to express that in an interview, that's the part that gets felt. It's like the Maya Angelou quote, right? People forget what you say, people forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. And that's a perfect example of that quote. You always want to bring in something that separates you from the pack, because it's all there on the resume, of what you're saying, the hard skills. But if she can impart part of who she is, that makes all the difference in the world. I love that. So in a particular industry, and you've worked for a lot of them, what is the paramount in your mind to succeed? What can you impart on the people listening to this and watching this? What is, in your mind, most important aspect to succeed?
Doing your job wholeheartedly. In other words, in earnest, really taking it seriously. It's a paycheck, yes, but we don't really want to work just for a paycheck. I think that if we had an ideal situation, we would be properly remunerated, but we would also love the work we're doing. So do it with heart, do it thoroughly, do it the best you can, do the best you can. Sometimes the best that you have to give is not sufficient. We know that the job market, the employment environment is not always fair, but you can only be responsible for your part, your piece, right? And I would say very important is two things. Ask questions. If you have any doubt, don't leave it to chance. If something isn't clear, ask for clarity. Don't, because that's where you take missteps. And I know I've made my share by not asking questions, because what would I think, Deborah? Oh, if I ask questions, they'll think that I don't know my job well. If I ask questions, they'll think that I am weak because I didn't get it the first time. But sometimes instructions and direction is not properly communicated. So if I don't understand it, I can't execute properly. So I have to go back to clarify.
Yes.
So that's important to have the courage to ask and ask for help as well. Sometimes there are things that are beyond one's ability and you have to just say, this is too much for me. I need help. So ask for help. These are shortcuts. Of course, we know every environment is different. Also find a mentor. Mentors are invaluable. And whether it be within your company or outside or someone maybe who's retired from that business, having a mentor is just such an asset. I know I didn't really have a mentor. I had a mentor on and off,
Yeah.
but really make it a point to find a mentor or mentors, people you can trust and go to with concerns or just for a validation, and that is just so valuable. Maybe it's a relative, or sometimes better it's not. Someone who's more objective, right?
Yeah.
And that's always such a wonderful thing. So do seek someone who can mentor you.
You know what? I'm so glad that you brought that up, Rosemary, because so many guests have said that. And I think kids sit there and go, what does that mean? Like, how do I get a mentor kind of person? Can you suggest, like, in this particular field, you've been in so many fields, and I know so many people watching this are getting into PR or getting into hospitality or getting into speaking or journalism or whatever. Where would one seek out mentors? And what does a mentor do for people?
A mentor offers guidance. A mentor is not a coach. It's someone who becomes a sounding board, right?
Mm.
Who can just give some general direction or sort of steer you. Maybe can give you encouragement when you are lacking it on your own. Someone who can help you deal with with sadness or with failure, because failure is part of you cannot have successes without failure. You can't be a winner all the time. So you have to learn early how to deal with failure, because that's a golden opportunity to improve, right? To learn to pick up the pieces, learn from what didn't work, and then move forward. The mentor how to find a mentor? There are formal programs of mentorship in some organizations where, if it's large enough, there is a pool of people who volunteer or offer their time to be mentors and can be matched to your particular requirements. There's others that are outside organizations that do offer that as part of, let's say, women's leadership, or that in the Latino world, there's organizations that do offer formal mentoring. But you can also find someone through LinkedIn, perhaps someone who you admire.
Yeah.
And you've been following, and it doesn't hurt to make a query to say, hey, Deborah, I've been following you. I love what you do. I wonder if I could have a few minutes and check in your availability to mentor me on whatever schedule works. Or sometimes it can be an email exchange or whatever is most practical. But yeah, you can reach out to someone you don't know.
That's a great advice. I totally agree with you on the LinkedIn thing. You really want to know about what that other person does and always make them feel good about following them or whatever. And I think that post-COVID now, that's why I brought up the thing about what you just said about mentorship, is that people have been so close that typically it's in school and you try to find it through your teachers or clubs or whatever, but that's been so far and few between, and how crucial that is. And it's also important in mentorship. That's how people open doors for you to go into the career of your dreams. Just like today, people will be able to reach out to you. I love that. And any last word of wisdom, and I know you have so much, for the passionate individual out there who believes that their passion deserves a chance. Has there ever been a moment in all the things that you've done where you didn't feel like you got the chance that you wanted, and how you pivoted? So what would your advice be?
Don't be the victim.
Mm.
Don't be the victim. Most of the time, there are things out of our control, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to say, what did we learn, and move on. Don't dwell. Don't ruminate on it. Don't carry it with you all the time, because that little bug of bitterness will multiply, and you'll take it with you wherever you go. The expression, she's got a chip on her shoulder kind of thing. you don't want a chip on your shoulder. You want to be clean. You want to be totally open and receptive to new information and new opportunities. And so I would tend to say, oh, I was the victim. Oh, wasn't treated fairly, or that promotion should have been mine. Let it go. You can't get stuck there, because if you get stuck, then you're going to do something dumb and you're going to end up hurting yourself. You have to just let it go and move on and say again, what did I learn from it, or what can I learn from it? And the other thing is that very important for people to speak up at a meeting, to let their voices be heard in those settings. Make your presence known. Don't just attend something and then not have a presence. You have to say that you were present. I mean, I have an idea, I have a question, or I want to support someone's point of view. Make your voice heard, particularly in a video conference. And lastly, don't be afraid to say you don't know. Saying you don't know, or I hate this, not really. Either you don't know. Oh, I don't know, not really. Not really. What do you mean, not really? Either you do or you don't, right? Not really. Right. It's like, I know,
pregnant,
maybe.
Not pregnant. Yeah.
I know, yeah, maybe a little bit I know, but no, I don't know the answer. So please help me. Let's find the answer together. And that takes courage. But trying to flub it and sort of, make yourself into the hero when you're not is only going to backfire. So people do respect someone who says, I don't have the answer, but I'll find it out for you. I'll work on it and I'll get back to you.
And I love that, Rosemary. It's so fun. I had my friend and colleague Janice Brown on, and she's president of a company called Centric Brands. And she was just telling me the other day, she always says to her, when the boss comes, do you have the answer to this? Do you have the answer to this? Do you have the answer to this? And she might just go, no, that's exactly what she says. And she's a president of a company. Mm-hmm. And she'll go, you know what? No, I don't, but I'll get to you. Mm-hmm. That is so big. And we never were taught that. It's always like scarcity and fear and whatever. What you just said right now is all about stepping up and stepping out and showing your authentic self. I love this. I'm sorry, what was the last one that you were going to say?
No, that was it. That was the last one. I mean, do your homework. I mean, do the work. Obviously, do the work, but there may be situations where you don't have the answer. And as I said, it's very emboldening to say, I don't know, but I'll get the answer, or I work with me to find the answer. Don't just say, I don't know and I don't care. Certainly you want to be able to get some action, going forward from that, but don't lie, don't mislead, don't misrepresent what you do, what you can do, or what you know.
Oh my God. Rosemary, just listening to you right now, I'm feeling more confident. You embody confidence, but these are all learned things. And I think what you're illustrating today is, you don't show up like this. You learn from people like you. And I want more people to learn from you. So can you share with us, if somebody wanted to reach out, or the best, ways to get in touch with you, either email or your website or whatever else you have? Can you share that with us?
Yes, it's actually quite easy. So if you're looking at the screen, you see my name on the Zoom tile, and it's rosemaryravinal.com is my website. And my email is info@rosemaryravinal.com. On my website, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. You can join my inner circle. You can download, I think it's about 6 different PDFs, from how to do a virtual interview to how to run a good presentation on Zoom, to now I have a book on executive presence. I have a 21-page sort of how-to on executive presence, which is really very, very comprehensive. And it talks to people at all levels. And I just put another one out, which is about how to be a podcast guest. So, yeah.
I'm going to take that.
It's fun.
I'm going to take that. Oh my
I don't think
God.
you need it, but it's there. And I loved doing it, because as I was getting myself ready for a podcast, I said, I should put this down into something that maybe other people can benefit from. So it's there for download, free. And so please avail yourself of all those resources.
Oh my gosh. Rosemary, you are the best. Thank you so much for coming on today. I don't know. I just feel very uplifted and knowledgeable and so confident in all the resources that you have to give. And I'm just so blessed and grateful to have you on today. So thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And everybody, go to the website right now. Thank you.
My
Have a
pleasure.
good one.